I did see 1941. Couldn't wait to see 1941. Disagree with everybody. I loved it. I read the paperback novelization that Bob Gale wrote.
Wow.
Realized how much they cut out of the movie. And I went to this, and again, that was one of the ones where I took up the bus from the South Bay to see 1941 at the Cinema Dome.
Wow.
Steven Spielberg's 1941. Actually, a film that we've been talking about doing for a long, long time that has a soft spot in our hearts. And it's actually kind of nice, actually, having lived with this movie for 40 years, to kind of have I guess, more sober conversation than we might have had about it in earlier times. But it's also kind of funny to have a sober conversation about such a zany movie. It kind of was a perfect store movie because it's so cut up into these little vignettes, and you can just kind of, it's easy to watch. And there's always like something big, loud, and brassy, all right, going on for the customers to like, hey, what's that? But, but his work is like mine. He'll have some of the funniest bits you're going to see in a given year, but he doesn't necessarily make comedies, all right? Now you can just watch it. But then it was kind of impossible to divorce yourself from the word and the talk about the movie. Every once in a while, it doesn't happen that often, but it used to happen enough. Every 1 or 2 years would be a big, giant extravaganza movie that there was a lot of talk about. And then the critical word is that it's a disaster and that it's a flop. And when I say the critical word, I'm basically talking about the big newspapers, the head critics of the LA Times and New York Times, Chicago Sun-Times. That was the big critics of the day. The Newsweeks and the Time kind of like put it down. Well, I remember actually, I doubt there was a situation in my neighborhood or in my school. We were talking about the reviews of 1941, but I had just started the James West Theater Center, my first professional acting school. And like the head teacher, Jack Lucarelli, had just seen it. And he was talking shit about it. Like everyone, like the Hollywood people were talking shit. Oh, it was terrible. Only Slim Pickens' part was the only part that was any good. It was just completely unfunny. It was a big disaster. So that was like sort of the word. Now, to counter that word was ever so slightly Pauline Kael. Now, she didn't review 1941. Unfortunately, it fell during her period of time where she only reviewed movies for like 6 months of the year. Well, it's interesting because she doesn't like this kind of movie. And I don't, and I think she would have actually, if she were writing the review for it, she would have been very tough on it. But since she didn't have to review it, she was like on the Tom Snyder show or something. And he's like, you're a big fan of Steven Spielberg. What did you think about the big disaster that he had with 1941? Just describe, that's how it was put to her. Yeah, because that's how it was thought of. And then she was like, no, that has nothing to do with the movie. They were just tired of Spielberg doing so well. They were just out to get him. He had gotten too big. This one is a little too big, and he kind of has lost his way a little bit, and so they lowered the boom. But there's some sequences in this movie that really are truly amazing, as good as anything he's ever done. So she was this one little voice against the prognosis. That was just catnip to me. That's talking me into like the movie against all odds. I am now ready for anything that I have a problem with. I'm ready to defend that and have less of a problem with it. I hated all those Hollywood people. I hated those critics. So I wanted to love this movie and fight in the face of it. And oddly enough, I actually think, even though this movie came out before we started officially working at Video Archives, that was more or less our archival position on 1941. Lance supported it. Lance championed it. Not vigorously, not as much as the Blues Brothers, but he championed it. But he definitely championed it. So by 84, 85, when we're talking about it, had played a zillion times on cable television, and they like it, but they liked it. Then going into actually finally see this movie that I'm a real big fan of, before it opened, I got the paperback, which is not just like a normal paperback. It's actually written by one of the screenwriters, Bob Gale, Bob Zemeckis' writing partner. It originally started out as a script by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. Then when Spielberg got involved in it and decided he wanted to do it, then he hired John Milius to do a big rewrite. And that's the movie that they made. I'm guessing Spielberg was their guy. Spielberg was their patron. And so he read the script, and then it probably was one of those things where he thought about it, then he kind of thought about it more and thought about it more and thought about it more. Guys, what if I were to do it? And then they were just excited about the idea of their mentor actually doing one of their screenplays, and they get to be involved in this whole big giant production. But I mean, not only that, you also have the situation of Spielberg doing his version of what he does in this canvas, but his job is to channel the wild craziness of Zemeckis and Gale, and to channel the wild, bombastic, warrior vaingloriousness of John Milius. He needs John Milius' voice in there. He needs Zemeckis and Gale Gale's voice in there. He needs their story structure. And this is one of the things where he ran afoul of the critics. He's using as his jumping off place a movie that means a lot to baby boomer movie-going audiences and to Gen X movie-going audiences who saw it when they were young. The movie It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. It's almost as if they feel that it's obscene, that a comedy should have this big of a canvas and should be this expensive. And that's a big deal about it, that it's expensive. But the thing about it is watching the film at the Cinerama Dome, because I'm so excited about the movie. I read Bob Gale's book, a novelistic portrait of his first draft of a screenplay. And so thus, you see what the original screenplay, the original movie that Spielberg first read when he first read it and was tempted to make it. And that's happened in quite a few little novelizations I've read written by the original screenwriter, but rarely do they really point out the true differences of what happens in a movie in pre-production compared to what happens in post-production. It's clear. You see what happens. And what happens is it has all these different storylines, but it had a through storyline. Well, they filmed all that stuff, but now Spielberg is stuck in a situation where this movie isn't Close Encounters, where he has the movie right there. No, this is more like a gumbo. This is more like a big Irish stew. And so it's got a lot of different pieces in it, and you keep flavoring the different pieces, and you feature this, and you take out this, and you thin out the soup, and you take out the carrots, and you add some more celery, or you add more chicken, you know, but whatever you add, you got to take out. And so now he's stuck in a giant extravaganza of a movie where he's got all these different storylines that he can feature. Now he's starting to feature the ones that the audience likes the most and de-emphasize the ones that the audience care less about. Okay, so one, the story is made to order when it comes to John Milius. But the thing is, while I'm watching the movie, I'm still expecting it to be like the book. So big scenes in the book are cut down to nothing. You know, it's like one big sequence here, then hops to another big sequence over here, and hops to another big sequence over there. And I remember, I couldn't believe how little of the story that they were telling. Yeah, and I was literally like thinking to myself in the Cinerama Dome, wow, if I didn't read the book, I wouldn't know what's going on. Well, I would know what's going on. Having said all that, nowadays I watch it, but even then, once I got into it, one, I actually think Spielberg's movie is better than their screenplay. I actually think the way he balances these different storylines is really, really good. The movie's as good as it could ever possibly be. Spielberg overdoes the big comedy aspect of it. Everything is a sight gag, all right? Everything is comedy business, and it's just too busy, all right? It's busy, and it's not funny, and it's a little obnoxious, all right? What Spielberg's suffering from here is the exact same thing that Peter Bogdanovich suffers from in Nickelodeon, all right? It's just all this constant comedy business. Every actor has a little bit. All these sight gags and stunt things, nothing means anything anymore because we see so many of them that they're kind of decidedly unfunny.
Wow.